This is Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. Great to be with you on another edition of the world's leading transit executive podcast. Today, our guest is Mr. Lee Ling Wee, Deputy Group Chief Executive Officer and President at SMRT Corporation in the nation of Singapore. And I'm excited to have with you today to help kick it off, Frank Hesse. Frank is the Managing Director for the ASEAN region for Trapeze and helped me secure the interview with Mr. Lee Ling Wee, and also lives in the area of Malaysia. And I wanted him to give us kind of an orientation to the region. Frank, thanks so much for being with us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the region itself, and then I had a few follow-up questions about what's happening in this Asian region.
Right. So ASEAN, for those who are not familiar with it, it stands for the Association of Southeast Asia Nations. So it is essentially 10 countries located in Southeast Asia and with mixed economies. So you have Singapore there leading the way on a high income sort of nation, very developed city nation, then followed with Malaysia, Thailand, Brunei being like a middle high income sort of nations. And then followed with middle lower income or developing countries such as the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia.
Okay. So that's the region. And you live there in Malaysia, right?
Oh, I'm French, born and bred in France, but I've been living in this region for 16 years. And I made Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, my home. For 16 years.
And you were telling me in one of the calls we had a while ago that it's always warm there.
Oh, that's right. I don't know what temperature it is where you are right now, Paul, but over here must be about 90 Fahrenheit, so 30 Celsius. Yeah, so pretty warm all year long. It's tropical weather. So we enjoy being in shorts and t-shirts all year long.
That's great. So tell us about what's happening. There's, we've had a couple shows now in this region, the ASEAN region. Tell us about, what are the highlights for you? So I know that there's some big rail projects going on in the Philippines.
That's right. I mean, this is very exciting times in ASEAN with rail expansion projects. ASEAN still has a lot to do compared to more developed nations or the Western world when it comes to rail infrastructure. But there are some great projects, and some of them are in planning still or halfway in construction. And the Philippines is probably leading the charge there with its rail expansion projects. And there are many projects being urban transit type of projects. There could be rehabilitation projects or new rail lines. There are a lot happening in the Philippines. Malaysia also has a number of key rail expansion projects. There's an exciting project happening here with over 620 kilometers of double track being built as we speak. And they're also pushing on with development of their transit system in the Klang Valley region, which is the Kuala Lumpur, the greater Kuala Lumpur region. So a lot of projects happening here on the rail expansion side.
And then I know that EV, electric vehicles, and hydrogen are really big there, having talked to several people from the region.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, particularly in Singapore, Singapore has the biggest bus fleet in the region. They are running on this city nation about 6,000 buses, and they have, if you recall the interview with Jeremy Yap, he was talking about the ridership of over 4.2 million passengers on their bus system every day, which is remarkable. But post COP26 and the commitment that all the nations are making towards net zero, Singapore has really started on with their electrification program. They're still in the learning stage. That they've acquired a number of EVs this year and coming up with a number of tenders, RFIs, looking at the market to to acquire systems to support the operations, the charging, the monitoring of an EV fleet. So that's really exciting. Malaysia is also looking into EV, probably a little bit behind Singapore when it comes to replacing the existing fleets. But Malaysia is also looking at bringing some new transit systems for secondary cities, and the choice of energy there, it's mainly electric. So as you're building a new system, you may just jump straight onto new technology and new energy. But the hydrogen is also gathering interest, particularly for Malaysia, which is historically an oil and gas producer, and has developed a lot of skills and knowledge into that kind of energy. So hydrogen is also quite high on the agenda in Malaysia.
Very good. Well, that's a great kind of roundup of some of the big things happening. Maybe just a minute or two on Singapore itself. Jeremy Yap, we had him on, as you mentioned. He works for the government. And then Mr. Lee Ling Wee is with a contractor that helps run some of the services there. Anything else you can do to help us set up the interview?
Yeah, Ling Wee is the Chief Executive Director of SMRT. SMRT is one of the operators on the island in Singapore. So they're operating the rail transit and also the bus, the largest fleet actually of bus on the island. But they also set up a private company to look at helping other nations with their projects, because they have gathered years of expertise and knowledge in that space, in the operations and the construction of some of these projects. So he will be talking about that on the show.
Well, thank you, Frank, for helping give us some context for this part of the world. We wish you the best as you continue to help bring transportation technology to that whole region.
Thank you, Paul.
And now Paul's interview with Mr. Lee Ling Wee of SMRT Corporation Limited.
And today I'm excited to be bringing you an interview with one of the world's leading transit executives from the nation of Singapore, and that is Mr. Lee Ling Wee, who's Deputy Group Chief Executive Officer of SMRT Corporation and President of Strides International Business. Mr. Ling Wee, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, it is. We have a 12-hour time difference, and so it's late at night for me and in the morning for you, and I'm glad we can meet in the middle here. So tell us a little bit, as we get started right off the top, a little bit about the island nation of Singapore. We had Jeremy Yap on a few months ago, and he is a high executive there in the nation. But tell us about the country and give us a little setup and a context for where you're operating.
Right, not a problem. Well, Singapore is a sunny tropical island in Southeast Asia, and we are located off the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula. We are a densely populated island city with a population size of about 5.6 million on a land area of about 728 square kilometers. So that works out to be about 8,000 people per square kilometer, which is a huge difference compared to about 36 in America and about 3 in Australia. But I don't feel it, when I'm in Singapore. Even though we are densely populated, close to 50% of Singapore is actually green space with nature parks and reserves, and we pride ourselves to be a city in a garden. Economy-wise, we are thriving a metropolis with manufacturing and finance as our main economy driver. Culture-wise, we are multiracial and multicultural society that's made up of 4 major communities: the Chinese, the Malay, the Indians, and the Eurasians. The residents here mainly travel on mass public transport, where more than 60% of the trips were made on a combination of train and bus. So public transport is very essential to keep our nation moving. And before COVID, on trains alone, we move about 3.4 million people in a day.
So yeah, you started to move into the transit system itself there. So tell us how it's set up. So Mr. Jeremy Yap, he works for the government, and then you all are a contractor who operates a big part of the service. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so we are We are a public transport operator. Our client, the concession is given by the Land Transport Authority or LTA of Singapore, and that's where Jeremy is.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about SMRT as a company and what you all do there.
Well, we have two major businesses, public transport and commercial business. On the public transport side of the business, SMRT is Singapore's premier multimodal public transport service provider with 40 years of experience in delivering safe, reliable, comfortable journeys. We have core businesses in rail, maintenance and engineering, as well as in bus, taxis, and automotive services. But the primary business in public transport is actually to manage and operate train services in 4 out of 6 urban rail lines in Singapore, and this makes up about 77% of Singapore's rail network. So as we mentioned earlier on, we work very closely with the Ministry for Transport and the LTA of Singapore.
Very good. So tell us some about yourself. And I know you were in the Air Force there and had a long various senior leadership roles there. I'm interested in your background. I think our listeners would be as well.
Before joining SMRT, I served in the Republic of Singapore Air Force for 23 years in various senior leadership positions. In my last job in Air Force, I reported to the Chief of Air Force on matters pertaining to fleet management, engineering, maintenance, logistics, and supply chain. And I was also involved in organizational transformation to raise the competencies of engineers and technicians and to optimize resources in the Air Force through automation and changes in org structures. The key reason why I joined SMRT was to address the challenges of managing an aging rail network in Singapore and to improve its service reliability. We measure service reliability by a metric called MKBF, or mean kilometer between failures. And failure here refer to delays of more than 5 minutes. When I first joined SMRT in 2013, we were clocking MKBF averaging less than 100,000. By working closely with LTA, the Rail Authority in Singapore, and key OEM suppliers such as Alstom and Thales, we managed to renew our aging network, put in place new systems and processes. And the end result was an improvement in our MKBF by 10 times to more than 1 million. We have been able to sustain this level of performance over the past 3 years. And in 2013, we have more than 200 delay incident of more than 5 minutes in a year. Today, we have reduced this number to less than 20 in a year. And along with this success, we also managed to win a tender for the award of a new line, the Thomson East Coast Line in Singapore.
Yeah. So Lee, how did you do that? I mean, you made those dramatic improvements in your key performance indicators. Do you recall any of the key actions that you took in order to make those improvements?
We decided to actually pay very close attention to operation maintenance. We have weekly meetings and to go through every defects that happened in the past 1 week. Drilling into every single delay, trying to understand the root cause by asking a lot of questions as to why and why. Asking many whys until we can establish the root cause. And we wanted to also make sure that our operation guys work very closely with the maintenance guy, and there's no silo between the various parts of SMRT trains. And I think over the years we managed to create a great team within the organization. And I guess this sums up how we did it. And of course, I think it's not just teamwork within SMRT, but also teamwork with the rail operator, because the funding for the renewal has to come from the owner of the assets, which is the Singapore government. And given that we only have 4 hours of engineering windows in a day, the government gracefully allow us to have what we call early closure and late opening, right? So that we have more engineering hours to do our renewal work during engineering hours.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen that in so many large organizations that they become siloed, right? And you've got operations in one silo and maintenance in another silo, right? And safety in another, and being able to pull all those together to kind of all row in the same direction can help you reach those goals. And so that was a tremendous result you had there. And you've got a pretty big operation there, right? I mean, you've got hundreds of trains and like 188 trains, right? 92 stations. MRT stations, 14 light rail stations, 5 depots, plus lots of light rail, 1,200 buses. I mean, you guys got a tremendous fleet there.
Yes. We are the major operators of rail in Singapore, and we started in 1987. So we have about 30 years of experience in rail and about 40 years of experience in bus operation.
So you started in 87. That's when I started too. That's when I started my career in 1987 in public transportation. And then I'm interested that on top of that, you've also got a major fleet of taxis, 2,000 taxis over there.
We have 2,000 taxis over there, and they are all in a hybrid taxi. And we set ourselves a goal of converting all these taxis to electric vehicle in 5 years by the year 2025. And the first batch of electric taxis were launched recently, and by the end of this year, we have 300 units of electric taxis plying the road in Singapore, making us the taxi operator with the largest fleet of EVs in Singapore. So we started this movement towards electrification of our fleet, and the overall plan is to play an active role in accelerating the adoption of EVs and to be a leading player in the sustainable mobility services and solutions in Singapore.
Yeah, I've noticed that as in looking into what you're doing there, that electrification is high on your agenda there. And you seem to be broadening your scope with the supply of e-buses, e-motorcycles, public charging. I mean, that's wonderful. What's your vision and ambition on electrification there?
We have a slew of initiatives to support the government's Green Plan 2030 that's aimed at achieving a net zero emission. So besides the rolling out of electric taxis, it's not just about electrification, but also the digital platform that goes along with electric vehicles, because of this concern about range anxiety. And we're also working with an electric motorcycle maker partner on development, deployment, and distribution of smart electric motorcycles in Singapore and the region.
And then you've got a kind of mobility cross-border, reducing the journey time between Singapore and Malaysia that we were talking about, that potential rail service. Do you want to talk about that at all?
That's one special project that I'm working on. It's the future cross-border rail link between Singapore and Malaysia, called the Rapid Transit System Link, or RTS in short. And in this project, we will contribute our experience in rail operation, maintenance, and service experience, and to this new cross-border line. So in 2020, we formed a JV with Prasarana Malaysia to design, build, and finance the RTS link. The JV will also operate and maintain the rail link between Bukit Changga Station in Johor Bahru, Malaysia, and Woodlands North Station in Singapore when the line is completed. So for those who may not be aware, Johor is the southernmost state of Malaysia, and Johor Bahru is the capital of Johor, situated just north of Singapore. And the passenger service is targeted to commence service by end 2026, and it will be able to carry up to 10,000 passengers every hour in each direction.
Wow.
Now, before COVID, the Singapore-Johor Causeway was one of the busiest border crossing in the world, with 350,000 travelers daily. Workers and students commute across the causeway on a daily basis. During peak hour, the time taken to cross the border could take up to 1 to 2 hours. With the link, we aim to relieve this cross-border congestion by connecting Johor Bahru and Singapore seamlessly with a stress-free, jam-free, and affordable and safe mode of transport, where the commuting time can be reduced to less than 30 minutes. And by so doing, we improve commuter experience and bring significant social and economic benefits to both countries, Singapore and Malaysia.
That's wonderful. You mentioned the COVID pandemic. How are things going now? Has ridership picked back up on the system? I know that a lot of systems around the world had less ridership during the peak of the pandemic. Where are you at now?
At the peak of the pandemic, sometime in the middle of last year, we were down by 80% in terms of ridership. And now we are about, minus 40, 50% ridership at this point in time.
And is it starting to tick up every month? You have a few more people?
Yes, it's slowly, gradually improving. And I think the encouraging sign is that in Singapore, we have about 85% rate of vaccination. And the government is, pushing to open up the economy, to have, vaccinated lane with countries, and they've recently announced with some of our European partners like France and Germany and UK. So I think we're making good progress in opening up the economy, and hopefully also in a local public transport. And I think what is important here for SMRT is to assure our commuters that it's still safe to travel in our trains, in our buses, by making sure that the buses are cleaned regularly, the train and all that, to assure them that it is safe to travel with us.
Yes, there's been a lot of studies done by Imperial College in London and other places that has shown that actually riding in public transport is very safe. I just interviewed a director of maintenance for a transit system here in the U.S. In a major city, and they said there has been no cases that have been tracked back to their transit system. And so with all the new air circulation systems and with all the cleaning that's going on, it actually has turned out to be one of the safer places to be.
Indeed, we have the same experience. The number of staff, our own staff being infected, has been very low.
That's wonderful. So one other thing I wanted to ask you to comment on was just on the value of contracting in general. Earlier this year, UITP came out with a study that talked about the value of major public transportation agencies, PTAs, around the world. Most of them contract out the bulk of their work to contractors. And I was talking to some of the CEOs and some of the executives of the transit systems involved, and they said they really saw great value in having private contractors with international experience come in and provide high value to them. Do you want to talk to that any?
I think we as a public transport operator who have quite a number of years of experience in Singapore, we are quite keen to share our experience with the rest of the world. And right now we are embarking on a new exciting consultancy project together with Transammo and Transdev as the shadow operator for the 4 new Greater Paris driverless metro lines. The main scope of this shadow operator job is to provide technical support and assistance to our clients, the Société du Grand Paris and the Île-de-France Mobilité, prior to the selection of operator for each of the 4 new lines. Now, this project is the first major international collaboration between Transdev Group and Strikes International Business, following the signing of an MOU in 2020. And looking ahead, the partnership will also pursue other O&M opportunities internationally in the transportation sector.
So speaking of international work, I see that you've recently been named, I think it's the national representative to UITP. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dan, is there anything else you'd like to bring up on the podcast today that we haven't covered yet about the work you're doing there in Singapore or anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, maybe I'll take some time to share a bit about what we do in terms of lifestyle experience in the transportation network. Complementing our rail operation, engineering and mobility solutions and services is our non-fare business under Stella Lifestyle. And our team in Stella Lifestyle is the largest managing agent of retail and advertising spaces in Singapore's rail network. And the team designs and builds and operates a network of shops and advertising media, translating our commuter experience into lifestyles, conveniences in train stations and bus interchanges. In a way, we also contribute by providing a more sustainable public transport by subsidizing and augmenting the fare revenue. And recently we teamed up with Crown Digital, a Singaporean startup with expertise in F&B technology. So that's one example of the value add that we provide. We will bring robot baristas serving gourmet coffee to some 30 train stations across Singapore by the end of 2020. And with this robot barista, commuters can order their coffee ahead of their travel via an app and collect it when they arrive at their destination train station. So I hope that kind of enhance the experience while traveling with us.
That's so you can order your coffee ahead of time, and then when you get to the station, it's ready for you.
That's right. So that's one of the innovation that we have come up with.
That's pretty neat. I've never seen that before. That's a very great idea. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Mr. Lee Ling Wee, Deputy Group Chief Executive Officer of SMRT Corporation and President of Strides International. You've got a lot on your plate, and I appreciate you taking the time today to share with us what you're doing as one of the leading transit agency providers in the world.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our experience.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged in depth, and to our special guests, Frank Hesse and Mr. Lee Ling Wee, for their insights into the ASEAN region and everything that's going on in this fast-growing area of the world. Now, next week on Transit Unplugged, we have a Techapalooza episode with a Transit Technology Trends for 2022 panel, where we're going to be talking about what we think is going to be going on next year in the transit technology space. As always, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, or would like to be a guest on Transit Unplugged, feel free to email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.